because some people have noises behind them.
She ate all of them. She ate all of them.
Let me mute them.
Yeah, Devon, you could just mute everyone for a minute?
Yeah, I'm gonna mute them all. Yeah.
Okay.
Now, what y'all would have to do is unmute yourself, who we need to talk, which is Jaquan and the board.
All right, you can hear me, D?
Yeah, I can hear you. Everybody else is muted except those who.
We apologize that we had to mute everyone. It's just that some people are not considerate enough to either, turn down the noise. And we might discuss some issues that is very important to each and every one of you and that you need to hear. Normally, if we didn't have to, we wouldn't mute it, but these are some serious issues that we want to convey to you and make sure you have a clear understanding of what's going on. So we're going to start in a minute. We're just going to give a few more seconds for a few people to come on, and then we'll get right to the meeting. Devon, you can unmute them for a few minutes, and then we'll let you know when to mute them. And then they can unmute themselves once I ask them to unmute. So I'm gonna ask. Once I ask them, then they can unmute. Okay. We give it about another minute or so.
Definitely no one else in the waiting room. Waiting room is everybody's admitted.
Person, you look too relaxed. He all chilling.
All right. We're gonna start. Again, we ask everybody to mute themselves, and we get to a Q&A part where you can ask questions. We're also gonna have some guests on. We have the attorney Raul Zalsberg, and we're also gonna have the attorney Phil Seelig, who's labor counsel. Let me open it up by thanking each and every one of you for participating in this meeting, because we know during this pandemic it's very hard for everyone to meet and for everyone to get a clear, concise understanding of everything that's going on. Let me start by saying my name is Jaquan Rivers. I'm the first vice president, acting president at this time. We have on this meeting, I'm gonna go by board members. We have Yolanda Moore, recording secretary. Laquan Word, unfortunately, is under the weather right now. Our prayers is with him. He's unable to attend. We have members from the board of directors. We have Joel Purser from DSNY Sanitation Enforcement Agents. We have Olivia Lingingser, office manager, membership coordinator. And we also have Devon G. Whitfield. He is our technical director. And we have our disciplinary attorney, Raul Zalsberg. And again, I just want to give you a quick history of myself. My name is Jaquan Rivers. I have over 35 years interacting with unions. Hold on 1 second. That's the lawyer, please.
He's here?
Yeah, Phil.
Not in the waiting room.
I'm going to resend it to you now. Okay. Yes, that was Phil, the attorney. He's having problems getting on. I'm going to resend him the link. Just bear with me 1 second. Give me 1 second. Okay. All right, moving right along. Yes, I got over 30 years, close to 35 years of working with various different unions in very different capacities. I worked with Con Edison, and I was part of the local 1-2, I'm sorry, as a shop steward. Then I was promoted to a chief shop steward. And when I came to work for the city, I was quickly appointed as shop steward, and then chief shop steward, then liaison, then promoted to the position of business agent. And after that, I ran for president of the largest Teamsters local in the country twice with over 24,000 members, and I only lost by 170 votes. So I've represented members from across the table for management for many years. This is what I do. I truly understand the concerns of members. I understand that we need a quality of life. We need a decent quality of life, for that matter. We deserve to be treated with respect. We deserve to make sure that our pay and our treatment in the workplace is adequate for a positive lifestyle. So I truly understand. I was in the trenches. I wasn't always working for the union. I worked for the city. I was a maintenance worker, heavy equipment operator. I know what it is to be on both sides of the spectrum. So when I tell you that I understand your concerns, I understand your concerns deeply. And there's a lot of things that we're going to discuss tonight. And we just want to make sure everyone understand where we're at, where we're going, and what we're looking to achieve in our travels. But to just start it off real quick, I'm going to let Mr. Raul Zalzberg speak. Again, he's our discipline attorney, and he has a few words because Raul has to go leave early tonight because he has some very important legal matters to take care for us in the morning. So I wanted him to get a few words in and introduce himself before he leaves. Raul, you got to unmute yourself, Raul. Okay.
Daquan, thank you so much. Good evening, everybody. My name's Raul Zalzberg. I'm the discipline attorney here at LEEBA. It's a pleasure to meet you all. Before I talk about what I do, I just want to talk a little bit about Jaquan and the board. I've spent some time working with them now. I've been representing LEEBA for a little while, and I got to say that nobody works harder than Jaquan. Nobody works harder than the board. I've got to know all of them. I'm in touch with all of them. They've really made an effort to make sure that their members are represented when it comes to discipline and when it comes to me. And I can't tell you how many times I've called, and Jaquan can tell you at night when a member has called me and I have a question or I want to clarify something. He's never once not taken my call. I can call him day and night, and I'm always willing to answer questions, always willing to help a member, always goes above and beyond, and that goes for the board as well. So you have great leadership here, and it's a terrific union. So take advantage of that. But about myself, again, my name is Raul Zalzberg. I'm an attorney. I deal primarily with labor discipline issues. I specifically do that for LEEBA. I have a strong background in criminal law as well, which has helped me immensely in dealing with discipline. Jaquan's not kidding. I do cases. We take cases to trial when they wanted to unfairly discipline our members. We have a hearing tomorrow at Oath at 9 a.m., which is the reason I have to cut my appearance a little bit short. I obviously have a client that needs my help and needs to prepare properly for that trial tomorrow. But as far as what I do, again, it's dealing with discipline issues, and I hope you guys can express to other members and pass along the idea that you don't have to reach me when it gets to the level of formal discipline charges. In other words, we are here. I speak to delegates regularly now. They've gotten to know me a little bit, which is great. I'm going to provide everybody with my cell phone number in the chat in just a second when I'm finished. Feel free to reach out to me. As Jaquan will tell you, I'm available day and night. I do my best to get back to members. In the rare event that I sleep, I get back to people the next morning. But I'm here to help. And the reason I want to bring up the idea that not only am I handling the formal discipline charges, of course, but oftentimes I can help before it gets to those matters. And just as an example, just the other day, I had a member call me regarding an issue. ultimately being offered a CD. What he wanted to know is, was this something that he should do or not do? And I was able to then talk to my sources, get a little background on the type of charge he had and what normally happens. And I was able to advise him not only that he should go ahead and do that, but if he didn't, normally these charges are much higher than what he's facing. And I was, by talking to my sources and by talking to him and getting back to each other, we were sort of able to determine that, yeah, you know what, his boss really liked him, and in a lot of ways was cutting him a break. And he had to make a decision quickly, and he wanted to make sure he was talking to someone who knew what they were doing. And we put our heads together, and honestly, we're able to avoid formal charges. So what I'm trying to say is, on top of doing trials when necessary, on top of doing what needs to be done to protect your jobs, to protect your vacation days, to protect your money, I'm happy to help below that. If someone has a question, my door's always open. So I want to emphasize that I welcome talking to everyone. I hope to get to know all of you, and I'm here for you guys. I want to make sure that people aren't taking away vacation days. People aren't messing with your overtimes. I appreciate the fact that we are in a pandemic, and that every day, every penny counts, and that's not lost upon me. I respect everything that you guys do. I respect the hard work that you guys put in. People who get to know me will tell you I don't talk like a normal lawyer, and I certainly try not to act like one in any sort of sense that I'm better than anybody. My grandfather was a union member his entire life. He instilled a strong belief in unions to me. I respect the hell out of you guys. And I just want to know, and Jaquan's gracious enough to have me help you guys, that I'm here to help. So I'm going to put my phone number in the chat. I'm going to give it a few minutes. If anyone has any questions, I'll let Jaquan talk. And if anyone, whether on this or privately, wants to reach out to me, I not only welcome it, I look forward to it. So thank you all very much.
Thanks, Raul.
Thank you, Jaquan.
Welcome. I just to elaborate a little bit more on what Raul was speaking about, having the proper representation is key. We can fight and get all kind of contracts, get you all kind of raises, but it does you no good if you don't have a job. It does you absolutely no good if you don't have a job. So it's important that we protect your job, but we need your help. It's not just us. It's all of us together. We need you and you need us. We have to work as a unit. That's why we call the union. So a lot of times members have misconceptions or misunderstandings of certain things. That's why you have delegates. They're your first line defense. It's important to get to know your delegates. It's important that other people who are interested in becoming delegates step forward. We're having a delegate training class. We will train you. We will teach you. Because one of the biggest problems we have is people not understanding the rules and regulations and the laws that governs over civil servant employees. You can learn these things. A lot of people don't know that there's a difference between a grievance and a complaint. Some things, a grievance is something where you violate your contractual agreement, and a complaint is something that's not right and we feel is not right. We can make a formal complaint. But some people think that complaints are grievances and grievances are complaints. So these are things that is important for each and every one of you to know. But before I go on any further, I want to bring on one of our attorney, who's the labor counsel for LEEBA. You really don't need no introduction, because when he give you his brief history, you're going to kind of say, okay, he was the guy. But it's important that you listen to this, because he has a wealth of information to give you about a lot of things that we're doing moving forward. And after he speaks, then I'll speak, and we'll let any of the board members speak, and then we'll go into Q&A. I want to introduce to you, each and every one of you, Mr. Phil Seelick, our labor counsel for LEEBA. Phil, you got to unmute yourself.
Yeah, got to unmute yourself. Yeah.
So thank you, Jaquan. I want to give you a brief background of my history in the labor movement. And of course, I'm available to answer any questions or to address any issues that any of you have now or in the future. You can always call my office. My contact information is on the LEEBA website. and there's always free consultations. You don't have to worry about paying an attorney to speak to me about any issue, whether or not it's related to your work. I spent 20 years in law enforcement. I was hired as a city correction officer. In my 6th year, I was elected president of the City Correction Union, an 11,000 member law enforcement union at the time. I remained as president for the remainder of my 20 years of service and had gone to law school at night while I was president. When I hit my 20th anniversary, having a 20-year half-pay pension, I resigned the presidency to start a law practice now a quarter of a century ago. I'm currently labor counsel to the NYPD Captains Endowment Association, the captains through deputy chief in NYPD, so all the uniform brass, as well as LEEBA. I was hired in November of last year to help LEEBA address many of the contract issues and other issues that are plaguing this union, and that the city has been challenging the union leadership on their fight for better pay and benefits for each of you and your co-workers in the other segments of the LEEBA Association. I'm not shy about fighting the city. When during my tenure as president, I led full-blown job actions, 4 full-blown strikes against the city. In one case, it was a 2-day strike. Always gaining benefits for my members and inoculating them from any Taylor law violations, because I got amnesty on each of those occasions, plus benefits for my members. And the last one, a 2-day strike, we had 33 demands, and each one of those demands were fully approved by the city after the 2 days of negotiations. So that doesn't mean that I act with reckless abandon. We have to be smart about it, and we have to take appropriate action, sometimes in court, sometimes other ways. But we will challenge the city in every effort to try to address the issues that are important to you. Recently, I had discussions with your board about these apprentice positions, and I had suggested that we initiate a mass grievance because I think they have violated the terms and conditions of employment that make a grievance appropriate here. And I think we can prevail if we pursue it. So I'm going to work with your board to put together the documents and paperwork, and maybe have some of you act as those who complain, so that we can add your name to the complaint. If individuals are shy about that, we'll do it without names. But one way or another, we're going to put the argument forward so that we can get an appropriate resolution. And so one other thing, as part of the services that I'm providing the union, on the website, you will see that there's a legal plan for each of you, and to include, in most instances, your family as well. There are reduced fees, or at times there are no fees at all. There's certainly free consultations on any matter, telephonically, of course, especially with COVID. We're working remotely, as we're doing now in this meeting, either virtually or just telephonically. But if you go to the website, you'll be able to see all of that. For instance, personal injury cases where every other attorney in the city and state charge 33% of whatever the award or benefit or a settlement is after the adjudication of the personal injury matter. We go all the way down to 25%, which in $1 million case means you'll get another $83,000 for you and your family. If it's a $3 million case, it's going to be $250,000 more in your pocket and $250,000 less in the attorney's pocket. And that's typically tax-free money. So these are the kind of things that we're providing you at no cost, just as part of the team effort to provide benefits and services to the members and to be responsive to your needs. I understand what it means to be in a uniformed service, because that's what I did for 20 years. And I know what it means to fight the city, because they look to whittle away benefits and to challenge the workers at every opportunity to try to reduce the cost to the city. And it's an ongoing battle, which I'm not weary of. It only strengthens me every time there's a fight. I get better at it, just based on having more experience and learning with each effort to challenge the city. So I think that gives you a pretty good backdrop of my attitude, my experience, and I can tell you that that I will roll up my sleeves and get to work and do everything I can to assist your union and each one of you personally if you have issues that need to be addressed. And of course, if there are any questions now or in the future, I'm available to answer those questions today, this evening, or if you want to speak to me personally because it's a personal matter that you don't want to have your laundry put out in the street, you certainly can call me, and it's confidential, as all communications with attorneys should be. So with that, I'm going to turn back to Jaquan and to the board for them to answer your questions or for questions to be leveled at me at your discretion. Good meeting all of you, and I'm available at your whenever you need me to be there.
All right. Thanks, Phil.
You're very welcome.
Thanks a lot. I just want to touch on a few topics.
Jaquan, wait a minute, before we start, Jaquan, there's one question in the chat that Phil usually addresses by now, but he didn't, so I just need for him to address it. And it's about the welfare fund.
Well, that's what I was getting ready to go. But Phil, if you want to answer where we're at.
Sure. So in order to, one of the objections that the city had when it stopped paying the welfare fund contributions. Now, just so you know how this works, all of the unions have welfare fund, trust fund agreements with the city, and the city then pays on a 28-day cycle payments into these funds, and then the unions go out and purchase benefits for the members. They typically are dental plans, eyeglass or vision coverage, their prescription drug coverage as well, sometimes insurance coverage. You had insurance coverage too for life insurance for the members themselves. After an accusation of poor reporting and management by your leadership at the time, the city violated the trust fund agreements, and instead of going to an arbitration to address these complaints, they just stopped paying. And that was done in 2018. I came on in November of last year. One of the first missions that I felt was important was to address this. I had discussions with the city, and they said they were uncomfortable with the union making determinations as to how to spend the money. And we worked out an answer to say, well, the union will relinquish its responsibility to make those decisions, and those decisions can be made by a third-party administrator. I've been working with companies to try to accomplish just that, and I made a proposal to the city months ago. The city said they were going to give a counter proposal. They never did. I contacted them as follow-up emails. They said, oh, you know, we're busy with potential layoffs and shortfalls because of COVID. We just haven't gotten to it, but we'll get to it next week. Next week came around, they didn't do it. I followed up with another email. Oh, I'm very sorry. At first, they didn't answer the email. Then after a couple of emails, I said, you know, not answering is just rude. And then they answered and said, we're very sorry. We'll get it to you in a couple of weeks, but we'll do it as soon as possible. Still nothing. I then partnered up or had this third-party administration, which I have a business to try to assist with this kind of thing, to encourage the city to get involved. I partnered up with the largest reinsurance company in the world. They operate in 120 countries, and that the name of that firm is Aon. You can look it up. They're based in England, in Great Britain, and what they do is they sell insurance, among other things. They sell insurance to insurance companies. That's why they're called a reinsurer. So when Progressive has a $30 billion potential risk in a particular area, such as a Sandy storm disaster, they will call Aon and say, look, Aon, anything over 15 billion we can't handle. Will you take that additional risk, and we'll pay you a premium for that? And that's how they reduce their risk of going under if there's a catastrophe. And other insurance companies do the same. So they get money from all these insurance companies. That's how they operate. But part of their business is also to manage benefit funds. One of the benefit funds that they managed was for the city of New York. So all of the GHI and HIP and all of that, they were doing the management for the city up until the time that de Blasio took office. So the city's familiar with Aon. It's not like they don't know. And Aon, one of their division managers, has now joined the firm of Easy Choice, which is a third-party administrator, and he is on the board of directors now of Easy Choice. Additionally, we got another national insurance company involved that also does benefit funding for across the nation, and that's called Alliant. They're a national insurance company, but they also do benefit management. You could look them up. So we feel that we are giving the city everything they need to have a comfort level to reinstitute the payments and have no excuse at this point to reject the proposal. I actually sent an email to them requesting last week, sent an email to them requesting a virtual meeting with these corporate heads and with OLR, the Office of Labor Relations for the city, and their attorneys. They had, last time they had about, when we had our first meeting, they had about 10 people on a virtual meeting such as the one we're having today. They read it. I also sent it to Renee, who's the, Renee Campion, who's the commissioner of OLR, and I sent a follow-up email today asking what their position is regarding setting up this meeting and whether it's too wieldy, and if so, perhaps a short phone call discussing their position. I haven't gotten a response yet, but that was only about an hour ago. So I know that the commissioner read it because I got a read receipt, but I know that the deputy commissioner who I wrote to did not receive it yet. So with that, I'm pressing the issue. We have alternative ways of kickstarting this if the city is stonewalling, as is one of their tactics that I've become accustomed to over the years. That's just one of the things that they do. But believe me, we have other coals in the fire, and if emails and conversations don't work, we could step it up. I'm an attorney. I have 2 law firms that I'm senior partner in, and I have a bunch of attorneys that all I have to do is set them loose and they will take action. So, and that action should result in putting the kind of pressure on the city to do so. I also had a meeting this week on this very issue with a politician or somebody involved in politics who we may start using some of our political connections to put pressure on the city to get this done. One last footnote on this: when the city had discussions with me early on, they said that this placement into the management benefit fund is a temporary fix. And I pointed out to them that that temporary fix is inadequate, and that they have a fiduciary responsibility when they chose to put them in the benefit fund for managers, that they took on a fiduciary responsibility. And to quote my exact words to them, I told them they did a piss poor job. So they have some potential liability here. One last thing, we have 2 actions. We're in court with them on this very issue. We're waiting for their last reply memorandum of law. It's before the court. And the second is an improper labor practice petition, which I recently wrote, asking that the Office of Collective Bargaining proceed with our improper practice. When they placed everybody in the management benefit fund, they did, in my view, violate the requirements to not to change the status quo for these members, at least some of the members, during contract negotiation or impasse. So because of that, they have committed what is called an improper labor practice, and the Office of Collective Bargaining is the entity that adjudicates those disputes. With that, I'll turn back. Thank you, Yolanda, for, or was it Olivia? I forgot who asked it, who mentioned that.
Was
For
Yolanda.
mentioning it and asking me that question. I know that I could sometimes be long-winded, and as I said last time I spoke to the board and some of the members, I know that if you want to be heard, you have to speak up, but if you want to be appreciated, it's time to shut up. So I'll do that.
Thanks, Phil. I just to elaborate a little bit on what Phil was explaining, those who think that the union was dormant and we were just sitting there and not moving forward. Phil could contest, Raul could contest, the board could contest. We're on the phone, literally, sometime from 7 in the morning to 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night, going back and forth with the attorneys with different options and different ways we could resolve this problem. And we know that the union is, that the city is taking advantage of a small union like us. We know what they're doing. But the thing is, we have to stick together. As long as we stick together and we move together, we're forced to be reckoned with. When they start trying to pick us apart is when we weaken. And we can't show that. Even in our darkest times, we gotta combine together. We have to have a unified force. We have to walk in step. Like I said, we need you just like you need us. No one is bigger than the other. There's no big I's and little U's, and there's no I's and teams. LEEBA is us. You are LEEBA. You are the members. We hear your cry. As you see, we're going in a different direction, or in a more 21st century direction, where we're starting, because of the pandemic, we couldn't meet face to face, because that's what we wanted to do. We wanted to come out to your different locations and meet with the members, but we felt that it was unsafe for you and your families. So we devised the Zoom meetings, which we're going to be doing periodically throughout the year and throughout the time until this thing is over. But we also created a newsletter. If you go to the website, most of you should have it, and if you don't, you can probably get it from the website. Well, that newsletter will be going out bi-monthly, and it gives you up-to-date information about what's going on in the union, what's going on in your department or your division, and it gives you insight on what other members are going through. That's going to be a very, very important role. It's going to play a very important role in the information process. Instead of us keep asking and answering the same question 1,000 times, we decided to put this information out there to you so that you could be well informed and with facts, because there's so many rumors going around and so many people got so many stories, but most people don't even try to get the actual facts. And that's one of the reasons why we did this, because we want clear transparency. We want to make sure that each and every one of you understand exactly what's going on and where we're at, because the decisions that we're making don't just affect us as individuals, it affects our family and all our families. That's why everything that we're doing here is so important. It's so important. I was telling Darlene, whereas I received the executive order from the mayor's office, right? The mayor gives an executive order to the members to go out and enforce a law on COVID, but you yourself don't have the benefits to protect yourself. It's a contradiction. It's a contradiction. I'm going to tell you to go out and enforce a law on a COVID pandemic, but you don't have the basic necessity benefits that you need and your family need to get through this. But you know what? It's all about politics, and no one wants to hear this side of it. But it's up to us to scream loud and in one voice. Somebody's going to hear us. Either they're going to hear us or they're going to know that we're the ones that's kicking over the desk. But we have to stand and stick together in order to get our voices heard. And this is very important. Are we going through trying times? Yes. Have we all been through trying times together before or individually? Absolutely. We have been through different things, but we have prevailed and we have come this far. We wouldn't be standing here. They thought when they did what they did with Mr. Winder that the doors were closed. But the rest of the board stepped up and let them know it's not just about Winder. It's about you, the members. We had an obligation to step up and make sure that you get the representation you deserve. And with that being said, I want to talk about things like, I want people to be very clear, and I want my delegates to understand, you know, you do have power when you go in that office to represent a member. There's a rule called a Weingarten rule. If you are called into the office and it may lead to some type of disciplinary action, you have the right, the legal right to say, I want union representation. Now, that don't stop them from asking, but it sure as hell stops you from answering. You don't answer anything without your union representation. I don't care how much they try to threaten you, or whatever the case may be. If they call you in and say, we want to ask you a few questions, you could go in there and listen to a few questions, but if you feel, and you have the right to ask, may this lead to disciplinary action? And if they answer yes, or if you feel that way, you have the right to request your union representation right there. And actually, and when you have respectful management, the questioning stops. But unfortunately, we got people that's in management or in supervisory position who they think they are, and then they continue to threaten you or talking to you in a threatening manner and try to force you into answering their questions. Well, they can, you know, my mother used to always say, a fool can only argue but so long by themselves. So if that person's asking you questions and you're not answering, how far are they going to go? You just continuously say, I would like my union representation, and you're legally entitled to that.
Right, Jaquan, can I just say one thing? That's a very interesting point that you made, because years ago, management had to ask you if you wanted union representation, but that law you're talking about, they no longer have to ask. But as a member, you have to say, I want union representation prior to answering any questions. So I just wanted to get that in there.
Jeff, just introduce yourself real quick to everybody. So
I'm sorry. My name is Jeff Hunter. I'm the director of the Legislative Action Committee for LEEBA. And so, you know, my job is to basically build the political aspect of LEEBA. I go back and forth to Albany, and I intertwine with a lot of the assemblymen, councilmen, but I'm not going to bore you with that information, but politics is very important, as Phil elaborated on prior to Jaquan talking about unification. But okay, thank you.
All right, thanks. So, and I just wanted to tap on to something else. I know that they have people working in retrospect out of title. Let me explain when something is deemed a citywide emergency. When the governor or the mayor execute a citywide emergency as a city employee, they can relinquish you of your daily duties and assign you to do something else. And that's not considered working out of title. The only thing that the union can do is make sure that whatever you're doing is done in the most safest manner possible. For example, school safety officers had to go on the trains and make sure that people were wearing masks. During 9/11, I was a maintenance worker. They sent me down to 9/11. I had to help with debris. When this city declares an emergency, that thing about working out of title is mute. You will never win that, and no grievance, no court, or whatever the case may be. The only thing we can do is to make sure that if they assign you to different functions for that time period, that they have to give you the proper equipment, put you in a safe environment, and make the safest environment possible. Now, it's up to you. It's up to each and every one of you. If they send you somewhere and you see an unsafe situation and you feel that it's unsafe, you immediately notify your supervisor, step back, put that onus on your supervisor. Do not take it upon yourself to do anything if you witness and see an unsafe situation. Now, you can't call the union and
Hey,
say,
Jay, let me interrupt you for a second. I just want to interject something that's important. That is, there's an agency called OSHA, and it has to do with safety. And it is a very powerful tool for members to use or for the union to use when there's an unsafe condition. They will come in, they will inspect the workplace, and they will impose all sorts of changes, sometimes at a great financial cost to the city to make the corrections necessary to bring it into compliance. So if you find there's a workplace danger of some sort that is identifiable, you can certainly bring it to the attention of your executive board, and the executive board can reach out to OSHA to file a complaint, and they will come down with inspectors and they will bust the chops of the city in ways that they're going to be, their tears are going to be blood, tears of blood coming out of their eyeballs, because they can really make life difficult for them. So that's a tool that you want to utilize when you find one of these situations that Jaquan is mentioning to you.
thanks, Phil. Thanks for adding on.
Absolutely.
And I want to tell you, I know they are directing the enforcement officers to basically outside dining, sidewalk dining, and telling them to inspect those places. Well, if it's raining or if it's snowing and they have electric heaters with electric cords, you don't go near that. You call your supervisor, inform them of an unsafe situation. They get paid the big bucks to make that decision, not you. When you go somewhere, if you go somewhere and no one has on a mask and it looks like it could be a dangerous situation and people are drinking, you do not try to enforce anything. If you ask someone for their identification, or if you have to, or whatever the case, and someone comes back in a hostile manner, it's not your job to argue that person down. You call your supervisor. These things are very important for each one of you to know when you're doing this type of work, especially if you're not accustomed to doing it every day. Do they have the right to ask you to go and just inspect the places? Yes. Do they have the right to put you in harm's way? Absolutely not. Anything they do has to be done with safety in mind first. But more importantly, you have to pay attention to your surroundings and make sure that you're operating in a safe and the most productive way at the end of the day. Just like everyone else who want to get home to their children and family, so do you. And that's the mindset you have to go into when you're out there. So again, just so that we're clear, when the city or the governor sits out an emergency, a citywide emergency, they can direct you to divert from your daily duties to do other things outside of those duties. That's why it's called an emergency, and that's what happens. That's one of the benefits of working for the local government. We had a meeting with the DOT chief of staff, Margaret.
Jaquan, I'm sorry. Can I actually add to your point?
Oh yeah, go right ahead, Rob.
Unsafe conditions, and this often bleeds into discipline. But the general policy, of course, is work now, grieve later. That's the general rule. But as Jaquan is making very clear, there's a broad and black letter law exception that falls into place when a condition you are being forced to work upon is deemed unsafe. And so Jaquan's absolutely right. While the general policy is work now, grieve later, that does not apply to unsafe work conditions. And so as Jaquan is saying, that's completely right. Do not put yourself in harm's way. If it's an unsafe work condition, you cannot be forced to continue to work. Under other circumstances, of course, you finish what you're doing and you ultimately file a grievance, and Phil will go through all that as needed. But that's absolutely right, because that bleeds into discipline often. And that is the idea that you contact the supervisor. If it's unsafe, you under no circumstances should put yourself in harm's way, and you're protected from having to do that. So I just wanted to just emphasize that point, Jaquan. Thank you.
Thank you, Raul.
I'm sorry, somebody else was going to say something?
No, I was thinking Raul as well.
Right. We spoke to the Chief of Staff, Margaret Bourguignon. I hope I pronounced the name right. Forgive me if I didn't. And we was addressing the issue of two people in a vehicle, and how do you practice safe distancing? How do you, when they want you to transport people or whatever it is, how do you maintain a safe distance? And you can't. What about sanitizing equipment? What about all these different things? So we've come to an agreement that we will address that issue, and they'll, as much as possible, of using other vehicles, possibly even using vans in order to obtain the social distancing space that we need. So is it over? No, but we have addressed it, and we're in talks, and so far they've been willing to comply with our request to make sure that everybody's in a safe and operating and working in a safe environment and safe condition. Real quick, I'm gonna say this, then we're gonna move on to the Q&A. We want to just let each and every one of you know, again, this team has been working tirelessly behind the scenes, in front of the scenes, throughout this whole tragic situation and this unforeseen situation that this union is being placed under. But perseverance is definitely at hand. We're moving forward. We're moving forward stronger and better. There are certain things that we learned, certain things that we're still learning, but at the same time, the focus stays the same. And that's to make sure that you, each and every one of you, have a decent quality of work life, so you can also obtain a decent quality of life at home with your families. Because again, you know, you're essential workers, you're putting yourself on the front line, but yet and still you're working for a city that each and every one of us can hardly afford to live in. And that's something to really think about. That's something to really think about. Now they're asking you to give the ultimate sacrifice, which is your life. When something happened to one of our members, if we lost members during the COVID, I pounded and pounded the news media to speak about it. But because of politics, they wouldn't. So when we call members to come out somewhere, we need the members to come out. If we called a press conference and at least 100 members came out, we would get the attention of some of the elected officials in the city. But it's a shame if we call the members out and we get 20. And the city and the government says, well, if your members don't care, why the hell should I? Exactly. These are very important issues. But moving forward, I think we're going to change the size of the tide. I think we're going to try to have a better relationship with the members, and the members have a better relationship with us. We want you to interact with your delegates. And all those who are not delegates and who have interest in being delegates and informing themselves and keeping themselves informed and helping out your brother and a sister, and join on. Reach out to your delegate and say, I want to be a delegate. And then we'll go to the delegate class. You will be in the mix. We will keep you informed. You will be at a lot of the negotiations. You'll be at a lot of the labor management meetings. There's a lot of things that you'll be entitled to and a lot of things that you'll be involved in. But you can't sit behind the wall and criticize everything unless you know what's going on. You got to get involved, people. You have to get involved. This is your livelihood. Everyone here has their own separate equal quality of life that they're trying to attain and keep. And together, we can make sure that we at least do the best that we can to sustain these things. So I'm going to, at this time, I'm going to turn it over to anybody else from the board who want to say a few words. Before we go into a Q&A, we're going to ask everybody to keep it brief. Yolanda Moore, the recording secretary. Yes, Yolanda?
Well, after everybody, say what they need to say on the board, just let me know, because there's like a few questions that I just want to get out before, a few questions that need to come out. So if anybody has anything to say right now, let me know. If not,
anybody from the board?
Yeah. Let me just add to what Jaquan is actually speaking to. As members, knowing your contract and knowing what's in the contract is a very, very important tool that you have. It's like a tool in your tool. So you would know when the city says, oh, we have a special order and you have to do that. You need to look into your contract so that you'll understand everything that they can do and everything that you can do. Because they're smart. They know what they can do because they wrote out all that stuff. And they know that we don't look at it. They think, oh, you know, the members are not going to look at their contract. Know your contract. When you know your contract, that helps you with the law, that helps you with what your rights are. You know, when you're going to talk to people, that helps you when you're working with your supervisors, it helps you when you're working with everybody else. So understanding all of the aspects of your contract will also help you with that aspect. You will know what they're supposed to do. They know what they're supposed to not do. But if you let them do it, they'll
Before Yolanda asks a question, I just want to say this because it was on a list of things to talk about. If any member or any supervisor is summoned by the advocate's office, all right, any member that's summoned by the advocate, you do not go in there by yourself. That goes back to the wine garden rule. Believe me, when they call you up there, they're not calling you for cheese and crackers and wine. They're calling you up there because there's an issue. And you don't want to go up there answering questions and not knowing what you're doing. At that point, it's an investigation going, and they're looking to find someone to blame it on. So I would strongly advise each and every one of you, if that happens, you immediately get in touch with your delegate or your union rep at your, that's closest to you, and let someone know, and they will call and they will let them know that they will be present at that or postpone it for another day when they can get there. Yolanda, can we address some of the questions?
Can I just say one thing?
Yes.
I just want to add to that, Jaquan. That's an excellent point that you made. I'll give you a perfect example. We had two members. I'm a lieutenant with sanitation, and we had two sergeants. They were going to speak to the deputy director, but union representation wasn't available. So what I did was I sent an email letting management know that we want to reschedule, but they called those individuals into the office. So I advised both members not to participate in any type of inquiry. The two members didn't take my advice. They participated, and as a result of them participating without union representation, they both got what we call a DS-249, which is a complaint. So now they both got served complaints. So now they want to reach out to the union and ask me specifically on why they received the complaint. And I told them, well, I have no idea because I had instructed you not to participate in any inquiry. And that's all you have to do. All you have to do is just simply tell management that you would like union representation, and that's the end of it. Conversation is over. But if you want to continue to talk without representation, well, guess what? Management is going to allow you to talk, and they're going to document, and they might even record, but most of the time they document, and then they use your own statement against you at the disciplinary hearings. I've been doing this for 3 decades. I used to be the vice president of Local 1181, CWA, and I'm glad that with sanitation supervisors, a number of us voted CWA out, and we went over to LEEBA, and we're in arbitration right now. We have one of the best attorneys fighting for us, which is Phil Seeley, and it was the best thing that we ever did. And if we didn't vote CWA down, we would still be in the same position, getting a regular civilian contract where under local law 56, we're considered uniform. We're part of sanitation services, and that's something that we're fighting now. So we've been without a contract for over 10 years. Our last contract was in 2010, but right now we're so close to getting at least a $30,000 to $40,000 pay increase, all because we voted CWA out, and we're no longer part of that pattern bargaining. So I just want to say my story should be an inspirational one, because I've been at this for a long time. This is the first time that I can honestly say that I have something to look forward to in regards to for me and for my family. And so, I mean, the choice is ultimately yours, but it's just something to consider. Everything is not going to always go smooth. You know, you're going to come across a lot of obstacles. God knows we did, but at the end of the day, we definitely see the light at the end of the tunnel. And I'll leave it at that.
Thanks, Jeff.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Jeff. Yolanda, you said there were some questions from the chat. Could you ask?
Yeah.
Could you ask them, please?
Yes, I want the board to actually go onto the chat and look. I mean, there's some questions that any one of us can answer at any point, but I'm going to start with this first one, and this is from Mr. I don't know how to say this, Mr. something wrong. Is there any news on the exam to make DOT civil service? And he says, I saw a lot of exams are EEE now. I'm not sure what EEE is.
I'm not sure what EEE is, but I do know that the DCAS, Civil Service Division, and all that, they're not doing anything right now. Everything is at a complete standstill. They're working remotely, so there's no exams, no anything. And luckily, they was lucky that they squeezed in that NYPD class that came out, because there's nothing on the books happening right now until further notice. So to answer your question in short, there's no indication of any tests at this time.
Okay, the next question is what, and this is from Nick, what is the grievance for being filed for apprentice?
Yeah, I can answer that. So this was a discussion that I had with Jaquan this week, and I got a full explanation from Jaquan as to what's been going on with it. And when looking at it, I think the appropriate mechanism is what's called a mass grievance. The grievance mechanism is spelled out in your contract and is spelled out in every contract for civil servants in the city. And they have different nuances as to timing, but when it's a going on a grievance such as this, the normal 120 or 90-day statute of limitations doesn't apply. And so you can take it on, and when it's not for an individual, but for a group of individuals, such as is true here, you can do what's called a mass grievance. And the difference between a typical grievance and a mass grievance is a typical grievance you have to take at the first step, which is your command level, where you work. And then you have to go through that, and they stonewall, and then eventually you get to step 2, and then you get to step 3. But with mass grievances, you can start at a higher step. So you don't have to go through the delay of going through the first couple of steps. And this goes right out of the agency and typically to OLR. Now, one of the impediments that Jaquan just touched on when talking about DCAS, which is citywide personnel, the same is true with OLR. Now, while I was on this virtual call, I found that the deputy commissioner did read the email that I sent on the health benefits. So he read it, and I'm expecting a reply probably tomorrow to that email. So I know that he's read it, and he probably will want to speak to the commissioner before responding. But nonetheless, they're working remotely too. So it's not like I can walk over there and pound on their door and say, I want to sit down with you, because everybody is working remotely. And while they are crying that they're dealing with some major issues, which is true, they have to deal with every issue. And they can't just ignore the plight of all of the LEEBA members because it's a smaller union, and from an overview, it's not as big as facing the prospect of 22,000 layoffs in the city, which has recently been averted by the teachers union, providing a $450 million easement of course to the city. And I am certain, I remember I was hired in 1973 originally when I was hired as a correctional officer. In 1975, there was a fiscal retrenchment, not for the same reasons as we have now with the COVID, but there was a fiscal retrenchment in the city. The city was under threat of going bankrupt. They went to all the unions and they got givebacks from all the unions, and they're looking to get givebacks from all the unions right now. And I'm sure it's eating up a lot of their time now and their energy in dealing with the various problems associated with the loss of the tax base, with the loss of employees in the police department running out the door and retiring because of the anti-police attitude and defund the police movement and the rise in crime. and all of the other host of conditions caused by a mass exodus of the city and a mass loss of tax revenues from tourism and from all of the businesses that are not generating the kind of sales tax and other tax revenues to the city and the state. So they do have some major problems that they're dealing with, and that's part of the impediments to getting a quick resolution here. But part of the problem is this COVID has stopped pretty much everything. For the longest time, a lawsuit that we filed at the end of almost a year ago, we still didn't have a judge assigned yet because the courts were closed for half a year. And we can't do anything about that. The courts aren't even convening where it used to be what we call cattle calls, where you go to show up in court and there are 60 cases and you wait for your case to get in front of a judge and you get 5 minutes to argue and set a time for a trial or whatever. You can't even go through that process. Everything is virtual and all of the judges are afraid to see people. And so they're pretty much shut down. And yes, they're operational and you could file electronically, but it ain't the same. And making an argument electronically or over a virtual meeting such as this is not as persuasive as when you're in a courtroom and you're able to really judge the reactions of the justice and see how your opponent is arguing and making their arguments and how their body language, all of that is meaningful when making an effective and persuasive argument. So these are some of the difficulties and challenges that go beyond the normal challenges that unions have in getting some of these issues, these motherhood issues for us addressed. So anyway, that's the answer to the question posed. But we are plugging away every day. I have conversations with your board every day, even on the weekends and at night, to address all of the concerns of your group as well as the other groups of LEEBA and the individual members. This is an ongoing battle, and it does eat up a lot of our time and energy. And believe me, we are doing everything that we possibly can do within the restraints of what's happening in the COVID environment here, and within the legal environment of what our options are, as well as our political options and public relations options to try to get something moving and to try to get improvements for each one of you.
Thank you, Phil. Yolanda, what's the next question?
As far as the welfare fund is concerned, this question is coming from Vinny. Vinny's been very vocal about this. He wants to know, why isn't the pressure being put on now that we're coming up to 2 years of this back and forth game of the city not answering? If phone calls and emails are not working, why can't we put it to a vote if we want to take the situation to court? Hold on. And then he says, not saying that the union is not doing anything, but we're coming up on 2 years. And if the tools at their disposal and our disposal, if the tools are at their and our disposal, why not take the next step if they keep brushing off the emails and the phone calls, and they're not going to decide one day to answer the emails and give us back what is owed to us?
Well, we are in court, and we have taken that initiative. Vin is correct that there should be a step up, and we're doing everything that we can within reason. You can't go over there or drag them out of bed and strangle them. It's just something that is not available to us as a tool to get something accomplished here. So we are utilizing the various venues to address this, both in terms of emails, in terms of phone calls, in terms of reaching out to various politicians. I had this conversation with Jaquan. We're setting up meetings with various politicians to try to intercede on LEEBA's behalf, to try to make inquiries on behalf of their constituents, to try to get the ball moving and to get OLR off their backsides and get something accomplished here. We're in court in 2 different venues, one in the state court and one in the Office of Collective Bargaining, as I mentioned earlier. I'm getting involved with various corporate heads, and I had a meeting earlier this week with a developer, sort of like a Trump type, who makes all sorts of political contributions to politicians, and employing that person to try to get on our side and get some movement in imposing on the political contacts that they have, because their largest expense is political contributions. And this is a billionaire I'm talking to. I'm not talking to some, street urchin. And so we are making the effort, and we have other meetings that Jaquan is setting up with the certain political entities to address this. So we're calling out. We're not stopping at any possible avenue for redress, but there are limits to what we can do. As I say, we can't go over there. I can't throw a hand grenade into their window. That doesn't mean we can't do other things, and those other avenues that Vincent is pressing for is an appropriate complaint and frustration that we share with you and with fellow members. So all I can say is we're doing what is questioned and asked for, and we're not easing up, and we're not backing off. I'm an old martial artist. I have a black belt in jiu-jitsu. I studied Aikido. I studied Goju. I studied Taekwondo and Hapkido. And, it's attack, 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 attack. You lose an arm, you still attack. And that's the attitude I have. That's the attitude I will continue to have. And I know that attitude is shared with co-counsel Raul and with the board members that I've come to know, and know that they're just as strong in fighting for the benefits and rights and better working conditions for all of the members of LEEBA. This is not something that any of us take a lackadaisical attitude about. It's an attitude that each one of us share, and we're constantly discussing these issues and trying to come up with some type of mechanism to address the poor treatment that many of the members are suffering under.
Can I just add to that, Vinny? That's a tedious process. Like I said, we haven't had a contract, meaning sanitation, since 2010. So the city they're expert when it comes to stonewalling, procrastinating, and they're going to utilize this COVID-19 as a form of an excuse. So you just be prepared. But I have unequivocally believe that when everything blows over, you'll get what's justly right for you to get. And that's the same thing with sanitation. And that's what keeps us motivated. Staying involved, being a part of the solution is always a good thing. And just to touch on what Phil, when it comes to political means, we're looking to create what they call a PAC, Political Action Committee, where we can contribute to these politicians, and in return, the politicians utilize their resources to get us the things that we need to get through their constituents.
Yeah, so it doesn't have to be money, Jeff. It doesn't have to be money. It can be you show up and you knock the door for them.
Of course, it doesn't necessarily have to be monetary. You're absolutely right. Yeah. So that's just some of the things that we're looking to do. But just keep in mind, Vinny, I sympathize to your situation. You waited 2 years. We waiting 10 years. But we will prevail. And it may be difficult to digest, but it's the truth.
Yes. Yolanda, what's the next question?
Okay, I have 1, 2, 3 that I think are actually are all together. One
Okay.
is Robert Martinelli. I'm hoping I'm saying your name correct. How do we get a copy of our contract?
How do we what?
How do they get a copy of their contract? Number 2.
Well, they can go on the Office of Labor Relations or OCB and look up recent
online.
agreements and print out their memorandum of agreement.
That's right. It's right online.
It should be right online. It's public information.
That's right.
Remember,
Okay,
you go to
next-
OLR. I'm sorry, you go to OLR or OCB. Both of them should have the most recent agreement. You look up your title and you open it up and you print it out and have a copy of it.
Okay, the next question is from Katrina Wright. I wish I could see her face, so maybe if she saw us, maybe she would know who we are. Katrina Wright asks, where is Kenneth Wanda, Jaquan, which I know you'll address that. And she also states that she is lost. She says, I am lost. Who are all these people? I never seen or heard of these people that are speaking besides Jaquan Rivers and Peter Locke. I've been here, Yolanda Moore, recording secretary since the beginning of LEEBA. Olivia Livingston has also been here for years at a time. We've been at the contract negotiation meetings with DOT. So Jaquan as well and Peter as well. And I guess you can address about Kenneth Winder.
Just to interject, Yolanda, and I also attended one of
Yes.
What's happening is we have members from different agencies.
Yeah.
And what happens is a lot of times when you speak to Peter or whoever at that time, they're the person probably hearing from DOT. Yolanda's very heavily involved with DEP, that's Environmental Police. You got Mr. Milan, Mr. Person, Mr. Hunt, who's deeply dwelled in sanitation. But when there's ever a negotiating meeting, most of us are all there. So you may not always see us together, but know that somebody's always handling the other divisions. And I introduced everyone. I'll do it again if you didn't catch it. But to speak on the Mr. Winder situation, this is an unfortunate situation. There was allegations made of Mr. Winder, which he's vigorously addressing and fighting. We're not at liberty to go into the details of it because it's pending litigation. Our prayers is with him. We feel strongly that and hope that he prevails. But right now, part of the agreement of dealing with the U.S. Attorney's Office, Mr. Winder had to relinquish his power as president. He's still president, but he cannot interact with members and he can't interact with the executive board because it's an ongoing investigation. And that's why we had to do some shifting on the board. And me as first vice president, I was thrusted into the position of acting president. So Mr. Winder is still president, but at this time, he cannot exercise his duties as a president. And that's why we had to restructure the board. So I hope I answered that question. Yolanda, is there another one?
Yes, Nick was wondering what the mass grievance is for, Phil. I don't know if you explained it before you started explaining the process, but.
Yeah, that addresses the apprentice program and the fact that the city is not honoring the requirements under that apprentice program and then promoting people into the positions that they are, as I understand it, that they are apprenticing for. And this is something that has been ongoing and is violative of what the whole structure of what the whole notion of what an apprentice means. And so I'll be sitting down with the board and maybe some of the members who've been adversely affected so that I could learn more about the details. This is something that just came to my attention recently. So I want to get the full blown understanding, because if I'm going to advance an argument in the form of a grievance to the city, I need to have a full appreciation for what's going on and what the issues have been and how long some of this has been protracted, so that when I put the pen to paper and make the legal arguments, in paper and then follow up with the verbal presentation to the arbiter of this dispute, that I can do so effectively and persuasively, because ultimately it's not going through the motions that counts, it's the outcome that counts. It's when winning matters most that you have to focus on the outcome and not the process. The process gets you to the outcome, but it's the outcome that matters. So I want to learn more about it. To be effective, I have to have a full comprehension of what the history has been, what the rule is, and why they have violated their responsibilities to make the cogent argument that is necessary to get the result that that these members deserve.
Thanks, Phil. And Phil said that very politically correct, but I'm not going to be that politically correct. I've seen people commit felonies and came home with less time on probation than some of our members. That is ridiculous to be on probation for 5 years. That is something that we talk about as well. We don't know what the last union agreed to. It's an uphill battle, but I feel that that's an injustice. And I don't think nobody deserves to be on a job for 5 years on probation at the whim of the agency. And let me just explain this to you, and I want you to really understand this. The city is not dumb by far. The city, everything they do is strategical. They give a title like apprentice. They hire you as an apprentice. They call it the apprentice when they don't have an apprentice program. That allows them to assign you to do anything they want to do. Some people say, well, they shouldn't be doing that. No, they are apprentices. They have no legal right when it comes to progressive disciplinary. They don't have these things. They're not covered under these things. So they can basically assign them to do what they will at that time. Is it wrong? Absolutely correct. But we're fighting uphill battle because these are things that was agreed upon before LEEBA came on board. So while we're trying to move you forward, we're still fighting things from the past that the old union agreed to with this apprentice programs, and it's not really an apprentice program. You don't get apprenticeship certificates to show each days, you know, all of these different things. You don't get it, but they call it apprentice program, and because it allows them to deal with you as they wish and use you in the capacity of their will, with very limited pushback from the union. So again, we do have an uphill battle, but we're pushing this because we're bringing these issues up that no one has ever brought up before. Everybody was just going along to get along. Well, unfortunately, we're not that type. And that's one thing that each one of you need to understand. This board and the board of directors are comprised of people from different various agencies who have a history of fighting vigorously for their members. That's how we came together. And it's just fortunate that in our travels, we ran across people like Raul and people like Phil, who feels the same way. So when you put all these pieces together, we're a well-oiled piece of machine, and we're moving forward. And all we're saying is that we need you to help fuel this machine that's moving forward by doing your part, by actually doing your part. You can also, hold on, you can also take it upon yourself. Just like we said, we reach out to politicians, you can reach out to your councilmen, your senators, and let them know that you're a first-line worker and you don't have your benefits. You just can't leave it just up to us. Reach out to your elected officials. They want your vote. Find out what they're going to do for you in return. They keep saying about their constituents. You are their constituents. Bring that issue, put it on their front door. Say, listen, I work and I serve and I protect this community, but yet and still I work for a city that I don't even have benefits on all my kids, or my family. You have the right to do that. That's your right as a constituent and a civilian of the city of New York. So we're going to move on, and moving forward, everybody, let's try to be brief because I don't want to keep everybody too long. Yolanda, is there another question?
Right now, I'm down to the last question, it seems, and it's from Nick, who asks, is there any word about the early retirement package?
No, nothing. They're throwing that phrase around all over Albany, all over the city, or there's enough certain things, and I say that very loosely. they were waiting for this election. They didn't know who was going to be elected as president and who's not. They feel very confident with Joe Biden being the president that some things will trickle down and funds will trickle down and budgets will trickle down from the federal government that will help our cities and states move forward. So that's remain to be seen what the next step is, because they were running around looking at thousands of furloughs and layoffs. But right now, for right now, that's been halted until they can figure out what's going on. So again, that's just rumors shooting around. There's nothing concrete about the early retirement. If we can open up.
Can I just say one thing? Can I just say one thing in regards to that early retirement? There is a bill you can go online. It's a New York State Senate Bill S8151A, and it touches on the early retirement incentive for 2020, 2021. It's tentative. I don't believe it reached the floor, but you can read the language, and it'll give you a better perspective on what direction they're going in with regard to the early retirement.
Can you put that on the chat, Jeffrey?
Sure.
Yeah, you can just put the bill number up there. But you see, that's why important. We concentrate on president elections, and that's why we got to look at assembly. That's why we got to look at state, because when they talk about the House, these are things that we're talking about. These are the things that we're talking about. We have to align ourselves with in order to get a lot of things pushed forward. But I'm not going to go on about that. We're going to open it up for you. If you have a question, while the attorneys, I know Raul has soon, but if there's anything we can answer now, we will answer. And if we can't, we will get back to you as soon as possible with a definitive answer. So please ask what you want to ask, anyone. And please respect one another. If someone's talking, please mute yourself, because he might be asking, she or he might be asking a question that you want to answer to yourself. So if anybody have a question, please ask.
Yes. Are we entitled to hazardous pay while we doing outdoor restaurant inspections?
Anytime you work in a hazardous situation, you should be entitled to hazardous pay. And that's the other issue that we're bringing up. And that's what they're fighting in the stimulus, that everybody who's essential worker should get hazardous pay. And there's a bill that they're trying to pass to give everybody who work in those conditions the hazardous pay they deserve. Where it's at right now, like I said, everything is in limbo because of the election right now. We should be hearing more about it soon. But yes, I agree. You definitely, when you work in a hazardous situation, you deserve to have hazardous pay.
Yeah, if you drive a nitroglycerin truck, you get paid more than if you drive in a UPS truck.
That's right.
Absolutely.
That's right.
That's right.
I hope I answered your question. All right. Anyone else? Okay, anyone else? Well, I mean, if there is no question, I mean, if you think of something when we get off, listen, we're not just here for now. You can go on the website, you can ask questions, you can reach out to the delegates. I think the gentleman with the Galaxy S8 wanted to ask a question.
Yeah, I wanted to ask a quick question real quick. Currently at this time, not only, I mean, we're getting some type of overtime right now because we're doing the restaurant inspection thing, and you know that we're doing. But now they're telling us, well, your minimum you can work is 5 hours. I says, I'm on my own time. All right, so you know, I can only work 4 hours. I can work 3 hours. No, you got to stay the minimum of 5. Can they actually do that?
When there's an emergency, they could, like, most times they put agencies on 12-hour shifts. They make each agency work 12-hour shifts sometime in case of emergencies. It depends on exactly what they have you doing, what's the circumstances is. It's not a broad answer to that. It's based on the individuality of what's going on. And that's something we would have to sit and talk to you separately, or talk to y'all and find out what's going on over there. If they're telling you you have to work a minimum of 5 hours, well, okay, what's going on? What do they have you doing for 5 hours? Is it overlapping with another shift? Are you doing 12-hour shifts? Are you not doing 12-hour shifts? All these different things become a factor in deciding on what's appropriate shift or what's appropriate man hours that you're supposed to put in. So, you know, it really depends. I would have to hear more about the details of how they do it.
Let me talk a little bit more about that. I don't think it has anything to do with shifts or manpower or anything. Is that they just want to maximize an inspector's work, I guess. So they figure, I'm going to give you overtime. I want you to give me at least 5 hours. That's really it.
Yeah. Well, let me just speak on that for a minute, because you have a situation where, as Jaquan said, you're in an emergency situation, and the agency is struggling to try to get through and do all of these inspections and do other things, and they're trying to do it in an efficient way. And that means that they don't want to have one person work 1.5 hours, another guy's 3 hours. I can give you 8 hours overtime. They're just trying to run their agency efficiently, and I'm sure the bosses there are trying to set some kind of minimum standard that they can manage it more reasonably. It may be an arbitrary number, and it may be an unfair number to some, and maybe a great number to others who are overtime hounds and look forward to working that many hours. But nonetheless, there isn't going to be a court in the world that's going to tell an agency that they can't set some kind of minimum guideline, such as a 4-hour minimum, when delegating overtime to run the agency in an appropriate fashion during an emergency setting. So this is not the kind of thing that a grievance would resolve. It's not a kind of thing that the grievance would move quickly enough to even address in a timely fashion to get the kind of redress that that this member has been inquiring about. I only have Galaxy 58, I think it is, not your actual name. But, you know, I'm trying to be respectful of your inquiry and be responsive to your question. But these are the kind of things that are very problematic for a union to resolve. No matter how legitimate your concern is, it's not going to be met with a favorable outcome because of the circumstances that we're facing and the reality that the city is going to be able to rely on. Hey, it's COVID, and we have to make these kind of judgments to operate and get these issues addressed, such as proper inspections.
Phil, I just want to say, with sanitation, once they declare a snow emergency, there is no option. We have to do 12 hours. Once they declare an emergency, it's 12 hours.
Yes, but they could change that if they wanted to. Yes. You know, that's what I'm saying. The agency can set certain requirements, and it can vary from agency to agency. The DOT or the DEP or the sanitation can adopt their own. Correction can do a different one. You know, because it's based on the needs of the agency as understood by the hierarchy of the managers of that agency, and what is good for the fire department may be terrible for correction or for your agency and so forth. So the courts are not going to intervene in that. They could give a shit. They're going to say, we don't, you know, that's not what the courts should be used for. And so, and if you grieve it, it goes through the Office of Labor Relations, and you know what they're going to do. They're going to back the agency.
Knock it back down, yep.
Yeah, so unfortunately, despite a legitimate concern that this member is voicing, it's not going to be resolved unless the particular boss or the particular head of your agency sees a value in maybe allowing certain members to work for a shorter time because the needs dictate that they would be advantaged by allowing it. But if they don't see it that way, it's just going to be a hard no. And for now, it's a hard no. That doesn't mean it may not morph over time.
The only thing that the union can do, and I'm going to say this because, you know, we do have one say in one area, is that we want to make sure that they're doing that agency-wide. Like, in other words, if they can't just do it to a few people and the other people get to do it.
Or discriminate because of race or other protected class.
Absolutely, absolutely. So if it's happening agency-wide, we're limited to what we can do about that. Any other questions? All right. Listen, everyone, I want you to utilize your LEEBA website. It's a host of information on there. If there's things you need to know, people you need to get in contact with, don't hesitate. That's what we're here for. That's what we're here for.
One more question.
Oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry, Nick, I guess this is Nick. Nick asked one more question. He said, anything on actually making us essential so us employees that live in Staten Island don't have to pay for Easy Pass as the residential discount is being taken away?
With all due respect, that's the least and the last thing on the city's mind right now. That's something we started addressing prior to the pandemic, and I'm quite sure we're going to pick up that bar right after this pandemic starts to slow down and cease. But right now, the cities don't even want to negotiate back contracts, let alone giving people perks. So I'm glad you brought that up. It's not falling on deaf ear. It's a good question to ask, but I can openly, and I'm quite sure Phil would agree with me, and Raul would agree with me, the city's not even worried about something like that at this time.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, but we will be readdressing it. So I was saying, before we close it out, I want to make sure that everybody understand, utilize your website. Go on there, look at the newsletter, look at the legal plan, reach out to Raul, you have a question, but make sure you reach out to your delegates, to involve them, ask them questions. And like I said, if you want to get involved, bring it to your delegates, bring it to Darlene, Victor. You bring this information forward, and we'll move forward as far as recruiting more delegates. But
excuse me, can I just say before you finish? I just wanted to say one thing. When you're done, I'll wait till you're done.
All right.
Go ahead, Darlene.
Yeah, go ahead, Darlene. You can speak.
There was just two. I was waiting for everybody to finish talking, but I just wanted to bring up 2 points that I was getting a lot of calls about. One, we received a email from Commissioner Trottenberg during the early part of the pandemic, and people need to remember that the absence control is suspended. So pay attention to that email. Go back and find it if you have to. If you're being told you need a doctor's note after 3 days, go read it again. It's actually 5 days. So there's certain things that they don't remember, or they don't remember receiving the email. The other is in the beginning, when people were traveling, like to hotspots, say you were going to Florida, when you were returning, you were being told you had to use your own time in quarantine for 14 days. That's not true. We received word on it, but not everybody received any email or information on it. You do not. As an essential worker, you do not have to quarantine and use your own time. However, you do have to follow the Department of Health and the CDC guidelines, get a test. You have to quarantine yourself, whether it's in your vehicle or if you work in an office. There's certain things you have to do to sanitize your area, but you do not have to use your own time.
True, that's true.
And as an essential worker, you should get expedited treatment or testing.
They have sites where you can get a test done and then have the results in 15 minutes.
Yes, for essential workers. Again, this is the first of many different meetings we're going to have. I want to thank each and every one of you for coming on here, because you show that you're interested in what's going on, and you should be. And as I stated, we need you just as much as you need us. And taking out the time from your family and after a long day's work, I commend you and take my hat off to you, because people really care, and that's good. When we can move forward together, as long as we stay in lockstep and keep each one informed of what's going on. I don't know what's going on in your agency better than you do, so we rely on each and one of you to bring these issues forward so we can address it, and then we take it to the lawyers and we have it legally addressed. But stay tuned to your newsletter. Stay tuned to the upcoming notices of your meetings. This is another thing. We asked everybody for their personal email address so we can also forward information, which we're going to have to get eventually when we start putting people back into these benefit funds. I urge each and every one of you, I urge you, if not to the delegates, you go online, give us your email address, because we've heard that they don't want you to use your official citywide email address to get personal information from the union unless it's only dealing with your benefits. But we have other issues to inform you about. And a lot of times people say, well, I didn't know. Well, how do you expect to know if we don't have a number for you or email address? I'm not going to send a pigeon out, with a note for you. It's not going to happen. And we're not going to run around the city chasing each and everybody down. Come on, this is an exerted effort on behalf of everyone. If you want the information, you got to make yourself available to get the information. So, and it's not, this is professional stuff. We're not going to be sending you telemarketing stuff about getting Geico. This is not what this is about. This is about you getting information that pertains and help you and your family in your everyday lives. So I really seriously urge you to make sure that you hand in your email address. Make up one. You can go to Google, you can go to Gmail, Yahoo, make up a bogus email and use that just for the LEEBA information. But as long as we got some way to contact you, you have to be informed of what's going on. All right. So with that being said, if no one else have anything to say, again, I want to thank the board for showing up tonight. I want to thank Raul. I want to thank Phil. And most of all, I want to thank the members for taking the time out to hear what we have to say. And please do not hesitate to reach out to us if there's a question that didn't get answered or you need answers to something moving forward. All right?
Yeah, and the other delegates are on the call, by the way. The other delegates are also on the call, so they can.
Yeah, especially our delegates. We need your contact information ASAP. With the pandemic going on and the new rules and different things coming up, we need to get information to the members in a moment's notice or as soon as possible. So I really urge each and every one of you to get your contact information to Darlene, Victor, or the website. And for the delegates, we are having a delegate training class December 2nd, a PowerPoint thing where we're going to give a brief understanding of what is expected and all that type of stuff. But I'm not going to go into it now. But I want everybody to be safe. Watch your surrounding. Use your mind. Use precaution. Stay safe. If you don't know, you stop and you reach out to a supervisor. That's what they get paid the big bucks for.
Just let them know that this meeting is going to be on the LEEBA website for people who didn't come in tonight. They can actually go on and they can see it because people are dropping off now. So I wanted you to say that before that.
I don't have to tell them. You did it.
I think you.
Yeah. If anybody want to review, anybody who didn't make it tonight, let your colleagues know that they can go on the website and they can look at the meeting and maybe some of their questions will get answered as well. But I want to tell everybody, listen, if I don't speak to everybody or see you guys, I wish you and your family a safe and a happy Thanksgiving and beautiful holidays moving forward. And we're going to go into the new year with our heads up in the air, and we're going to accomplish a lot together. It's going to be a new day and a new year. That's what I could tell each one of you. So thank you for showing up today. God bless y'all.
Thank you.
God
Good night.
bless.
Thank you.
Have a good night, everybody.
Good night.